So this episode is for anyone who has felt like they're quote unquote not normal. Welcome to Grace for the Tryhard, a place where we tryhards can be reminded of the grace we've been given and be empowered to walk in it every day. Do you ever feel like no matter how hard you try, you aren't good enough? Have you struggled with shame and want to experience more freedom in your walk with Christ? Do you feel inspired and empowered when you hear other people's stories of transformation and healing? If your answer is yes to any of those questions, I'm right there with you. Being empowered to live and work out of grace is possible, and here we are learning how to do that together. No need to show up polished, poised, or perfect. Come as you are and join us as we experience God's grace together. Welcome back to Grace for the Tryhard. I'm Lindsay, your host, and I am so glad that you're here today. Today, we are going to be talking with my wonderful friend, Bryce, about mental health. So Bryce is best friends with my husband, Joe, and they grew up together. And I got to know Bryce about 4 years ago when he and his wife, Brittany, moved down to where we live today. And so it's been a journey of getting to know Bryce more, but I think this conversation might have been our most in-depth conversation about our struggles and our past. And I just learned, wow, Bryce thinks very similarly to me and has had similar struggles of wanting to fit in. Many of my own personal shame scripts or the things that I told myself I should be or should feel or should think have a lot to do with what Bryce is saying about feeling not normal. I used to just kind of always think, oh, I'm the only one experiencing this. I'm the only one feeling this right now, and no one can relate, so I can't tell anyone about it because they would judge me or think less of me. And it was really comforting in this episode to realize Bryce had those similar thoughts growing up and today. Bryce shares a lot about his original thoughts about mental health and counseling and how they've changed and evolved over time, and really just how God has met him through counseling and how he's realized that God cares about his heart and cares about his thoughts and cares about his day-to-day life, and that has really just deepened his intimacy with the Lord, which is awesome. And so for any of you out there who are struggling mentally, who feel like they're not normal, who feel like they're alone, I hope this episode helps you to know that you aren't alone, that Bryce and I are one of many who experience similar shameful thoughts, and there is hope for a way out. There is hope that you don't have to feel this way forever. There is hope that you don't have to suffer through life, and that God wants to meet you, and there are a lot of resources out there in our society and in our world that we have access to that can help us through this daily life. One last thing before we get into this episode, I do recognize that I was wearing a lapel mic and my hair may have been touching the mic. If you've listened to any of my past episodes, you know, guys, I am not an audio expert. I am learning. I'm on a journey, and I am embarrassed that I keep making mistakes with the audio. But I'm growing, and I just wanted to put it out there that I recognize it, that there might be a little crinkly sound when I talk. I apologize for that, and I'm aware of it for next time. Keep the hair out of the microphone or use a microphone like this that won't touch my body. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into this episode. So today on the podcast, we have my lovely friend, Bryce, hold for applause, who has been best friends with my husband for how many years?
I mean, like, probably 15 at this point, yeah.
And you're only 16, so since you were 1?
Yeah, that's exactly correct.
Just kidding.
On the nose.
Bryce is married to Brittany, who was on the last episode. If you guys didn't see that, go check that out. So this is Joe and I had I think we started dating, and you guys came to visit. We went to like a nature area, I put on a lot of bug spray. And the first thing was you made fun of me for putting on so much bug spray. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
Okay, so besides that, what was your first impression?
Well, I would like to talk about that.
Okay, actually. About the bug spray?
Yes, because I do think that that's a theme that I see in your life.
Wait, what?
No. It's a good thing, though. Okay, probably. Maybe not. In that moment, my thought was just like, wow, this girl is very thorough with this bug spray right now. Like, she is concerned about getting bitten by something. But, I mean, the theme that I've seen throughout your life is you are a very thorough person when it comes to just stuff in general. So I think it was really a good first impression of, like, who's Lindsay? Puts on a whole can of bug spray. Oh, she's thorough.
Okay, so then I remember we were in the car after that. And I don't remember exactly what you said, but it was something like, so we're going to be friends. Tell me about yourself. Who is Lindsay? And I remember being like, oh, interesting.
I don't have a lot of incredibly close friends, maybe that I've known super long. Joe's probably, for sure, other than like my brothers, my longest standing friendship in my life. So just the times I'd spent talking with him about you before you guys started dating and how interested he was, how like hot in pursuit he was, and very, very focused on you dating him. When it started happening, I was like, okay, this is probably it. Wow. Like, this is probably going to be Mrs. Phipps. So let's just skip the formalities, bypass any, like, screwing around. Yeah. Who are you? And what are you about? You're dating this guy who's been a really close friend of mine forever. So I think I was just ready to, like, all right, so let's do this. Who are you? And I was pleasantly surprised that you were wanting depth of friendship right away. That was nice. So made it easier.
Were you concerned, like, is she good enough for him?
Not really. Just because he spoke so highly of you before I met you.
I need to know everything he told you.
Yeah, I could definitely reflect on it. I just remember like a specific time where I came to visit him in Bloomington, and he was just being very ambiguous about a girl that he was currently pursuing, but he was acting like she didn't know that he was pursuing her. It was very secretive. And I was like, okay, this is weird. You normally don't not tell me stuff like this. And the next time I visited, he was just all in, like, telling me about you. And I think that was right before you guys started dating. So I think you just had a pretty impressive resume presented to me before I met you. So I didn't have any outstanding concerns. It's like, all right, I mean, Joe really likes this girl, so unless it just really doesn't go well when we first hang out, things are probably going to be good.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have this car interaction, and I was like, okay, I think Bryce likes me because he's, like, wanting to know about me or whatever. But then after that, I feel like you were standoffish for, like, maybe a year and a half into our friendship. And I would go home and be like, I don't think Bryce likes me. And Joe's like, no, he's just like that.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's a facade.
That aspect of my personality or impression that I have given people in the past is something I really don't like about me, and something that I've been pretty focused on and adamant about changing within the last few years, because I really don't want people to feel that way when they are interacting with me, when they first meet me, or they're having consistent interactions with me over a course of months, years. They're like, wow, this person just really would like me to not be alive anymore. I don't really feel that way about anybody, but my resting face and demeanor probably says otherwise, which I don't like. So I wouldn't say that it's a facade as in I'm intentionally trying to present that, but maybe more so it's a facade as that's not really what I want to depict about myself, but just circumstances over a course of a lifetime led to me being pretty standoffish with people, despite maybe how I actually felt about people and interacting with people, getting close in friendships and stuff. So, sorry about that.
You don't have to be sorry. It's just something I noticed, and it's always felt like a joke to me. Like, I didn't actually feel like you didn't like me, but it was just interesting because I can't really do a facade. Like, if it's really hard for me if I don't like someone to not show it. And I like most people, so I don't have that problem of like everyone thinks I hate them. But do you feel like it was a protection thing? Like you're trying to protect yourself?
You know, friends from high school, especially friends from my college years, they're just not there. They just don't exist anymore. And there's a lot of things that happened that led up to that happening in my life. And some pretty, sometimes subtle, but a lot of times abrupt, aggressive exits from my life.
Yeah.
Probably indefinitely led to friendships aren't worth the potential collateral.
Wow.
If people are going to be here in my life and maybe they're making promises of being present for certain periods of time or through allegedly difficult times come and then they're not there anymore.
Right.
Or they make a maybe dramatic exit. Oh. So I know that that's definitely part of like a genuine disinterest I had in people for a long time was just what makes you any different than, you know, the other people that I've had these experiences with. And again, that's not how I wanted to feel, and that's not how I wanted people to feel that I felt about them, but it was a thing for several years.
So what changed?
Counseling. Counseling, and I mean that both in the obvious terms, which is seeing someone who is a counselor and can help me professionally, but also one of my favorite names or titles of God or of His Holy Spirit is counselor, divine counselor. Yeah. So it's a bit of both. Like it was going to a Christian counselor who really helped me unpack a lot of this stuff that I didn't know was there. Yeah. But also just learning more and more about the identity of God as a counselor. And as I experienced my human counselor, and she was showing me how to be counseled and the way that she cared for me and things like that, and helped me navigate stuff at a loving, slow pace, but also a challenging pace. It's like, God's like this too. Wow. Like if He's the divine counselor, then this is a shadow of what a counselor actually is. Yeah. So how much more, right, is He a counselor? So really it was her that helped me kind of open that door. And then God was like, yeah, I'm a counselor too, by the way. Like I'm the counselor. I started this whole idea of counseling.
BT does.
So I'd really love to counsel you as well. So that's helped me a lot. And of course, like my wife has been that role to me as well, like a companion and a counselor, helping me unpack things and seeing stuff in my life that I don't see. Yeah. Because she's in such close proximity. That's really helped as well.
Yeah. That's cool. So how did you see God before you saw Him as counselor?
Probably a father with very specific expectations for life. And you don't meet those, disappointment is the byproduct of that. Or anger, maybe. Yeah. But mainly like, oh, you could have done better. I wished you could have done better, kind of a thing. And it was very based on action, not on health. Like how I'm thinking about the world, how I'm feeling about the world. It was more about, well, what are you doing in the world? And if that's not good, then I'm disappointed. Rather than, how are you doing, man? That didn't seem to be on God's radar. From my perspective and upbringing, it wasn't. Yeah. So the idea of Him wanting to get into like the nitty gritty of my life and how I think about friendships with other humans. Like it's not that He doesn't care, but does He want to talk to me about it? I don't think so. I don't think so. So that's changed a lot too, my perspective in that way.
When I look at you, I don't think, oh, Bryce is a tryhard. Do you think of yourself as a tryhard?
Yes. I think that it's like many things, you can categorize it. I'm not a tryhard when it comes to things maybe that you can see, achievements or like pursuing tangible things, whether it's education or experiences, whatever. I'm not a tryhard in that way. I'm definitely a tryhard internally in my internal life, and it's very exhausting, like the mental and emotional tryhardness.
What are you internally trying hard to do?
Generally be normal.
What is your definition of normal?
I think at some point I was starting to have some revelation as I was becoming an adult, like my late teens, early 20s, of some of the things happening in my mind weren't normal just because other people weren't talking about them or sharing them, or if I was even alluding to maybe some things that were going on in my internal life and it's not being accepted, or maybe it's being seen as a joke or satire. It's like, oh, that's so funny. Like, I'm not kidding, but like, let's laugh it off because I'm seeing that that's not normal, and I don't want you to think that about me.
Yeah.
So going through the mental gymnastics of like, how do you be normal or perceived as normal to other people mentally?
I get that. I totally relate to trying to be normal, whatever that means to me. I look at you, and since we've been friends, like, you seem like a very normal person. Like, you got this, like, cool vibe. Obviously, I know the real Bryce.
That's not cool.
but like, I don't think people would look at you and be like, he's not normal or he's weird. But I totally relate to, like, the internal battle of, like, I don't feel normal. And that can be a challenge because people look at you like, he's fine, he's good. But internally you're like, I am not fine. Like, I'm really working so hard every day to be perceived or to feel somewhat normal, but then I don't even feel normal. More people experience that than I realize. That was like one of the clouds over my life growing up was I'm the only one experiencing this. And I think that was just a way the enemy could come in and just breed shame in my heart of like, you can't talk about this like you're saying because no one can relate to you. That's too weird. That's too bad. That's too intense. So it's comforting to me, like, knowing you've experienced similar feelings and thoughts. So do you want to talk a little bit more about, like, your mental health journey?
As I'm realizing through interacting with other people and conversations and friendships I'm picking up subtly that some of the things I'm thinking and struggling with thinking and feeling aren't necessarily normal things. So that was kind of the beginning, and like you were just saying, usually the shame comes in and then a desire to hide it. Yeah. It's like a safety thing. Yeah. I don't know, you're just wanting, humans desire to be accepted and to fit into community, fit into a bigger thing. So when you're starting to feel like an outsider, you want to, it's just this survival instinct kicks in of what do I got to do to appear that I'm supposed to be here and I'm supposed to be a part of this thing. So a lot of the stuff, it was just some undiagnosed things that I was dealing with for a long time. And as I was just kind of subtly starting to open up to people, a lot of those first interactions were bad. It was either, like I was saying, it was taken as I'm kind of joking around a little bit, which I wasn't trying to. Right. Or it was just outright like, whoa, what? You what? Yeah. And, you know, and that's me being kind of putting the big toe in the water. I'm not really telling you a lot. I'm just feeling out the room and you're reacting viscerally to this. Right. So you're definitely not going to want to hear the rest. Yeah. So it really wasn't until I got married, which is about 5 years ago now, that, like, obviously your life changes when you get married. You're sharing a space in a way you've never shared a space with someone. And that includes sleeping arrangements. So once we started sharing a bed, it didn't take that long for my spouse to realize that my sleep patterns weren't very normal. That I fidget a lot, I move a lot, I get up a lot. It's just, hey, what are you doing? After a while, I was like, what, are you feeling okay? Like, you are moving around a lot and you wake me up a lot because you're getting up and it just seems like you're not getting very restful sleep. Are you feeling okay? And it's like, I don't know what you mean. Yeah, this is just how I live. I've actually been having some really good nights lately, like sleeping and stuff. Yeah. So it was finally someone, and I was forced into that vulnerability, right? Because I have to share a space with this person because we're married now. I didn't want to open that up, but I had to because my life changed.
Yeah.
And she was noticing this isn't normal, and she's pointing it out in a way that wasn't making me feel bad. It was more of a, hey, like, you don't really sleep a lot. Is that okay? Has this always been a thing? I didn't know this about you. So that was kind of the first step in, like, okay, things that are happening in my life aren't very normal. The sleeping isn't very normal. And I will say with insomnia, the first time I really noticed it was like that sleepover age. You know, like elementary, middle school.
Yeah.
You're sleeping over at people's houses on the weekend. And I was always the last person to fall asleep at those.
Really?
You know, you'd make the decision as a group, like, okay, let's go to bed now. They turn off the lights. And you can slowly, like, just hear the changes and everyone's breathing. Like, this guy's asleep, that guy's asleep, that guy's asleep. It's been 3 minutes since we've turned the lights out. And I know my routine is going to be, like, several more hours of laying here before I start to fall asleep. Eventually, through just a lot of circumstances, I started going to counseling. And over time, like, I got more comfortable with her and opening up to her and talking to her about some real things going on in my life. And I just started talking about some of my mental processes, how I process information. The conversation started with insomnia. And she was just asking me, like, what's going on in your head when you're having insomnia? And I was just trying to explain, like, the filing cabinet system in my mind for how I'm sorting through information and the desire to, like, continually sort through things until it feels like it's in the correct spot and just this, what I thought was good. You know, I'm just thinking through, and it's not bad stuff. I'm just thinking through important things in my life.
Right. And are you, like, visualizing a filing cabinet, kind of?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah,
it's this whole thing. There's, like, an office space in my mind, in a way, of working through, like, totes of unmarked information and having to sort through and put things in the right places. So I explain all this thinking it's, like, pretty normal. And she's just kind of looking at me for a second, like, okay, like, where are we at right now? What's happening?
Yeah.
And she kind of drops a bomb on me, which... to her, it wasn't a bomb, but to me it was. And she says something like, you know, that really sounds like OCD. And I think that you should maybe see a doctor about it. Yeah. And I was like, a what? I'm sorry.
Time out. What?
For a second. And it really spooked me.
Yeah.
Like, because I trusted this person a lot at this point. Yeah. And I believed her. I believed her counsel. I wrestled with that for a long time, and I was in denial about it. Because, you know, OCD is one of those things that people joke about a lot. Yeah. If you're a tidy person or you want things a specific way, oh, you're so OCD about this. Or people will say that about themselves. Like, oh, I'm just so OCD about my desktop. It has to be a certain way, or my workspace has to be a certain way. So for it to be me explaining, like, a process in my mind, and it leading to a severe lack of sleep for most of my life, and her saying, like, this is a real mental illness, and I think you have it based on what you're telling me, and you should go see a doctor. And if that doctor prescribes you medication, you should take it. I wasn't okay with that for a lot of reasons. Yeah. And, you know, so on and so on. I mean, that journey altered a lot of my aspects and understandings of God. A big part of my upbringing, I'll use some Christian words, but I'll explain them, is like Pentecostal, charismatic. In other words, people that just get very excited very easily in church about a lot of things. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there was a high emphasis on faith and God doing divine things in your life. Now, I will preface, I still believe that that's true. Yeah. I believe in charismatic gifts or spiritual gifts. I believe that they happen and that God wants those. But the focus on faith, it was really about us and how much faith we have in God doing things. Yeah. Wow. And if we're asking for God to do things, whether it's healing our bodies or basically blessing us and giving us stuff we want, if those things aren't happening, you're the problem. There's something wrong with your measure of faith, and it just needs to get better for you to get what you want. And it's one thing if you're like believing for a bigger house and you're not getting it. Okay, you know, whatever. But if you're terminally ill or there's really bad things happening in your life circumstantially and you're praying and asking God in faith and they're not happening, that gets really shameful.
Yeah.
Because people see that. They see that you're unwell and you're asking God to heal you and nothing's happening. And with that environment of, well, you just got to have enough faith, the equation points to, well, there's something wrong with you. If God's not doing this thing, it's not him, it's you not having a measure of faith. It got said a lot, like, ignore what the doctor says kind of thing. Like if you go to a doctor and they're telling you you've got a mass in your chest or there's a tumor in your brain, like, don't get discouraged and don't listen to that like God's going to do something. Now, I believe that God can and has, and I've heard testimonies, people I know and trust and love being healed miraculously in that way. So I'm not saying that that's wrong, but it formed this theology in my mind that God and medicine were enemies with each other. So, like, medication was bad. Medication was basically you openly announcing, I don't have enough faith to get healed. Which is bad.
Did they really say don't listen to the doctor?
Yeah. Wow. And it's hard because, again, there's parts of that I agree with. Like my own grandfather, like, he's gone in, he's had heart issues. He had like a small mass on his heart once, and he went in a few weeks later and it was gone. And the doctors were like, I don't know what happened. It's like God can do miraculous things. I believe that. But it was just so aggressive of almost like the doctor is Satan telling you you're sick. Don't listen to him. God's got something else in mind. There's truth in there of, like, God can do divine works still, but it was so aggressively pushed of that's the only option. Like, you either get healed or you're a failure in your faith and nothing changes. The idea of God working in your life through like a medical professional or through medication of some kind or even like counseling, it just wasn't really presented to me.
Yeah. So in a weird way, even though it was like they believed in miracles, they also had a very limited view of God. Like, he can only work in this like crazy supernatural, like things appearing out of nowhere. So that's kind of hard, I think, people who grow up in that to like see, like, oh yeah, I don't have a limited view of God. Obviously he could do anything. He could save me, but it's like, but you only see him working in a certain type of way. So it is somewhat limited. What if God wants to heal you through a messy journey of you saying, I don't have faith, or I'm discouraged, or I'm doubting, or I'm in pain, like I'm in physical pain. And like, there's something about you being real with God and God kind of diagnosing you, like, this is what your heart looks like. And that's how he actually heals it versus living in denial and being like, no, we're good. He can't actually heal it, you know? So I think like doctors in our life today, like, I agree with you. Like, I totally believe God can heal and want that for people. But I think it's dangerous to be like, don't listen to the doctor because what if he's diagnosing you with cancer so that you could start praying that God would heal you of cancer and that you could start doing things to like take care of your body in ways that maybe you weren't before. Like, it just seems a lot more complex to me and like, I don't know, just more amazing in my opinion that God would use different things like that to bring his healing. I can imagine it being just a challenge to like get over that hump of like, no, this can't be how he works. Like, he can't work through medicine. He can't work through counseling. Like, I know it took you a while to like start going to counseling. And I'm guessing that was connected to the upbringing stuff. Yeah.
I think mainly with the counseling, it just wasn't talked about at all. And it was always painted in a light of things are really wrong if you're going to counseling. And I didn't want, I wasn't advertising it to the world that I was going to start going, but I didn't want to feel that way of, oh, I'm going to counseling now. Like, things must be pretty bad for me if this is where we're at. That's just how it was. Because the only counselors I knew about were like psychotherapists, if you're going crazy, or marriage counseling when your marriage is falling apart. That's the only context for counseling I had. So going into it with just like my wife saying to me, hey, I think it'd be really good for you to talk to somebody who's a professional, but also like obviously God has called them to counsel people. That would be really good for you. And that was it. That was the suggestion. It's like, I just don't think it's bad enough, right? Start doing that. Is it? Are you trying to tell me it's bad enough? So there was a lot of complicated feelings in it.
What was it like the first time you went?
Probably standoffish. Like your second, third, fourth, fifth impression of me. I'm sure there was levels of like, hey, I'm doing this because my wife asked me to. I really, you downplay the things you've been through because someone's always had it worse than you. And it's like a false humility in a way. So it was a lot of that. Like, my life really hasn't been that hard. My parents are still married. I didn't have anything traumatic happen to me that I didn't remember, which most of the time you don't remember anyway. I didn't know that at the time either.
Yeah.
And I probably honestly only kept doing it because my wife was asking me to, not because I felt a connection, not because I felt like I needed it. And just over time, I was realizing, oh, there's some stuff happening here, especially when we hit that moment of talking about like mental illness things and it being legitimate. It was just okay, I need to start taking this seriously, I think.
Our stories are very similar, Bryce. I don't know if you knew that, but like I probably started experiencing depression junior year of high school, and then senior year. I was thinking about this the other day. I remember I had this mentor, and she was my band instructor. She was in her like 20s when I was in high school, so she was kind of like just a older sister figure. And I remember going to a competition and just like bawling for a long time. Like it felt like an hour. And I remember her just looking at me like, I can't help you. You're too bad. You're too much. And I was just like, shame, 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 like crazy. And then I go to college and, distraction and blah, blah, blah. And then get saved. And then like year 2 or 3 in a ministry, I have like a mini breakdown where like I just can't handle life anymore. And again, I'm following Jesus. I have joy, but I'm experiencing depression again. And that's scary because I'm like, oh, I'm a Christian now. I shouldn't experience this. And then finally it was like, I'm feeling bad enough to go to counseling, And I remember that first year, literally every week I'd be like, okay, this will be my last one. Like, this is going to be fast. 3 months. Yeah. I literally went every single week for a whole year and then continued to go regularly and have gone for now, I don't want to count, but like Brittany said 3 years. I'm like, wow, so I've been going for like 5 years or something. So you said earlier, like, there's this fear of you, like, not being normal. And then your counselor says you have OCD, which is like, quote unquote, not normal or not common or maybe not what you want to experience all the time. So what did you have to do to like accept that and not like hate yourself for like experiencing that?
Well, there was definitely a period of time, if my timeline is correct, of denial. I mean, at least a couple months of her very gently hounding me. Have you scheduled a doctor's appointment yet?
Your wife or your counselor?
My counselor. Well, both of them, really. It's like, I haven't gotten around to it quite yet. Things are busy, whatever. A big part of it, and I guess you could, when I think confession, I think about like you're telling someone something bad you did. And I think that is true to some level. But confession is just, it's being honest and vulnerable about what's going on in your life.
Right.
So I had a moment where I was at one of these retreats for my job, and I was like connecting with the team of staff and students that I was going to be working with that year. And it was just a time of like, we need to get to know each other well. It's not pressure of like, what's your deepest, darkest secrets, but it's like, we want to foster vulnerability and honesty within our groups.
Yeah.
So we're providing opportunities to do that. And this was all still so fresh for me. And I told, these guys, half of them I didn't really know yet, that my counselor recently told me that I had OCD and that I was kind of terrified about it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to expect. Like, oh, what?
Yeah.
But no, it's just, wow, that sucks.
Wow.
I'm sorry. And acceptance, like they wanted to know more about it. And then come to find out that one of the guys in that group had OCD. And he had it for, like, he was aware of it and on medication for it for like 4+ years at that point.
Yeah.
So immediately he was just like, yeah, me too. And if you want to talk about it with me, you can. So the companionship that I formed with this guy helped me tremendously because he was just able to put words to thoughts and feelings that I had that I was afraid to describe to other people because of how alarming that they could be.
Yeah.
And he's just saying them before I'm saying them out loud.
Yeah.
And it's really helping me
Yeah.
with that sense of
Wow.
gross uncommonness that I felt from the world. So that acceptance from people that didn't understand what I was saying, but they still accepted me. And also from someone who really did. It helped me a lot.
Yeah.
So I went from, I'd really like this to not be a thing and never tell anybody, to, fast forward a few years later, I'm very open about it. And people that I don't know it about me, because other people know that I do know it about me, and they just talk about it if it comes up.
Right.
And it's been really helpful. Like, I'm not saying, oh, it's just who I am, it's my identity. I'm not making it that kind of a thing, but rather, like, this is something I'm experiencing in this stage of my life, and it is part of a daily experience, and I'm figuring out, like, how to walk in sanctification through that. And I just want to be honest with the people around me about it.
So it's been a journey of accepting what you're experiencing. And a part of that has been people accepting you and not treating you differently or not being like, whoa, that's a lot. And then other people who can like totally relate and like, you're like, wow, I really am not alone. Like, I'm not that unnormal or different or whatever. That's like a good segue into like talking about the whole medication thing, because I struggled similarly to you. I struggled to even go to counseling. Probably should have gone to counseling in high school. That was over 5, 6, 7 years later. So it was a while. And then I struggled also to get on medication, as my counselor continued to encourage me. Have you gone to the doctor? No, I don't want to. Finally, I get on it. And I didn't really notice a difference for a while, but I also didn't take it consistently. And the stuff I'm on is like, you don't see an immediate change. It's like you need to be on it for like a month or so. But then also got married, and my husband seeing those like high highs and low lows, and he lovingly encouraged me to try it again, and so got on something, and I've been on it like very consistently for a while now, and I just feel like steadier, and I've gotten to the place of acceptance, like, I am on medication right now. I'm on depression and anxiety medication right now. I'm on 2 types of medication that I have to take every day, which is annoying because I hate just taking it every day, It's just a little thing. But I've accepted it, and I didn't want to tell anyone. And now I talk about it like you're saying, and people know it about me because it's just something I'm going through right now. It's not, like, who knows if I'll have to even have this forever. And if I do, I do. But, like, I feel good. I feel happy, and I feel a lot more steady. And I think the fact that my counselor helped explain, like, a deficit of serotonin, like that, it's like a real chemical thing. And again, I heard about it being a chemical thing, but I didn't get it. And this is literally just giving me more of that chemical so that I'm more at a good baseline,
Yeah, I think within a Christian context, a lot of people probably have somewhat similar experiences or feelings about it that maybe you and I have had. Or maybe there's just nothing because no one talks about it. At least in our generation growing up within the church culture, it didn't feel like anyone was talking about it.
Yeah.
So, in my job right now, I work with college students in a ministry context, and we're talking about mental and emotional health a lot, all the time. So it feels very relevant because it's coming up in this discipleship context conversation what's going on with your life, like what's Jesus speaking to you. And a lot of the hurdles have to do with like high levels of anxiety, depression, dissociating, insomnia. Like this is a lot.
Yeah.
So it feels relevant to have the conversation about it in a positive light.
Yeah.
Maybe one that lets people feel more comfortable with the idea of, hey, you're not a bad Christian if you want to pursue like medication and inquire about what it could do for you.
Yeah.
And I think it was my wife, Brittany, that said this, because I was just like so resistant to the medication. I was so resistant to it. And she said something really simple like, what if God just wants you to take this for a while so that you can think clearly enough for him to speak to you about this stuff and help make things more clear?
Yeah.
I was like, I just haven't thought of it that way.
Right.
Because with OCD, there's a big spectrum of what it can be. Mine is a lot of internal. So OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, they're two parts together. You've got your obsessions, you've got your compulsions. And you can be anywhere on that spectrum of which one of those you deal with more. Obsession is going on inside your head. Compulsion is you actively doing things and having ritual routine to deal with the anxiety that you're experiencing.
Yeah.
I'm way more of the obsessive side than the compulsive side. I have dumb compulsive things I do, but mainly I just can't stop thinking and having terrible thoughts. Being able to approach that in a way of, hey, there's a lot going on inside your head. What if God is trying to lead you into a place where, you're going to take a medication and it's just going to help slow things down a little bit so you could just think clearly.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a little bit more vacancy inside your mind for God to speak to you. That was really a big turning point in my mind of, okay, I'm open to that happening. So if that's something that could happen from taking this medication, I'll do it. Whether you want to call it your heart or your spirit or your mind, like there's some kind of inner occupancy that we desire to have with God internally, and you can't biologically place it in your body, but there's a dwelling place somewhere in us that Holy Spirit wants to reside in and abide with us, and we abide with him. And I just didn't feel like I had that space because it was just so full of other things happening and I couldn't shut it off.
Yeah.
And an outside force, this medication, it's helped me find that in a lot of ways. And I'm still on it. And I don't know how long that will be. I'm fine with that. For now, it's doing that much for me at least.
Yeah. That's great to hear. Has it helped with sleep at all?
It has its ups and downs.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really good. I do still, like this past week, I've been having a lot of nightmares lately. And that's one of the potential side effects of the sleep medication. So it's like, okay, this sucks right now. I'm just trying to actively be sensitive to God's Spirit. I don't feel like I've gotten any, hey, you should jump off this from him. So I'm going to keep going and just touching base with them. Like, hey, I'm still taking this, but it's not going great right now.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Right.
Okay, I'll stay on it for a bit longer.
Yeah.
So but anyway, it has improved.
That's good. I do want to put this out there. I was going to say this at the beginning, but I forgot. Bryce and I are not doctors.
No.
We are not medical professionals. We're not medical or mental health professionals. We're just telling our stories and our experiences. So if you are experiencing anything that we're talking about, you should go talk to a doctor, mental health professional, trusted friend, and get support. There's like side effects to things like you're saying, and I think that's super important to think about. Like my journey with medication has been, I think, pretty good. Like I really haven't had any side effects. The first few years, I just wasn't really noticing a difference. And you've experienced some side effects. So I think it's really important to just check in with yourself. And I think another really important thing is like medication is helpful, but medication isn't God. So like personally, what's been great for me is having a relationship with God first and foremost, going to counseling with someone who loves Jesus and can like facilitate, do the like actual physical mental health stuff that I need to like understand, but then also bring God into it and make it like spiritual and mental and emotional. And then medication too. Like I personally, and again, this is just my opinion, don't think medication is gonna solve all your problems. It's just gonna be one helpful thing for a lot of people. So I also want to put that out there because I do know some people are just like, oh, just get me on the drugs. And you're like, I mean, I think that's great that you're open to that, but I think it's more holistic than that. And this is just one helpful tool that we have the privilege of accessing.
Like God's plan is sanctification for us. Mm-hmm. That's the long-term goal that he has for us. And we're not going to reach that full level of sanctification in this physical, tangible life, but ultimately that's the goal for all of us. So I would feel pretty hopeless if the idea of this life, it's like, well, it's just not attainable. Mm-hmm. So I'll just stay on the medication and that'll be the long-term solution. Mm-hmm. There will probably always be supplemental things in this life that I need help to get through. Yeah. But I don't look at my medication as this is the end-all be-all. Mm. It is a step. And right now, I'm open to it being as long or as short as it needs to be. Yeah. And actively, like, staying connected to God's Spirit in a way of, like, hey, if you told me to stop tomorrow, I would. Mm-hmm. I'd be a little concerned. But with faith, like, he told me to. Mm-hmm. Versus, hey, if you give me just an indefinite, hey, let's just do it for now and I'll let you know when things change. Yeah. I would do it because I trust him. Mm-hmm. But it's not, I like what you said, it's not God. Mm-hmm. It's not my solution. Mm-hmm. But it is something that I believe he led me to in the interim to help me right now.
And so what you're saying is like, we need to have a relationship with God to even navigate this. Like, and that's one thing too, like, I want this podcast to be a place for people who don't know Jesus at all, or people who've known him for a long time. And so I think some people who like don't speak Christianese are like, what, a relationship with God? What is that? How do you even have that? You can't see him. What does that look like? And so I just encourage you to, first of all, look at the Word of God and like look at the life of Jesus. And if you see his life, then you'll know what God is like. And the Bible is actually like a living book. Again, that probably sounds crazy to people who aren't followers of Jesus, but like he wants to actually speak to you personally through his word. So we're not going to dive into how to have a relationship with God in this podcast, but I do want to just touch on it based on what you said, because I think that's so important, is like, we can't just look at religion or faith or Christianity as like a rule book. Like, okay, I'm going to just do all these things and I'm going to get on the medication and I'm going to read the Bible and then I'm going to pray and we'll be good. It's like, no, it could change. Like, you literally have to be open and just like be connected to him. Like, he wants to be connected to you. He doesn't want to just be your prayer slot machine like you talked about earlier. And that's uncomfortable for a lot of us because relationship is more fluid than just a test.
I've been thinking about him as a cartographer of my heart or soul, which sounds dramatic, but I like dramatic things. Yeah. Cartographer is just like a map maker, a person who charts maps and discovers things and draws out and makes it clear, like what's here, what's going on, what's the geography of this area. Yeah. So I think about God being a very patient guide and cartographer, where when he's trying to counsel me, it's like we're delving into deep, unknown caves inside of me. Yeah. I'm terrified because I don't know what's going on in there. It's just all dark. Yeah, yeah. Don't know. Right. He does know what's there, but he's taking the time to patiently discover it with me at a pace that my mind's not going to explode, but it's also going to challenge me. Yeah. We go in the cave, we explore, I can get a little overwhelmed, but it's not too much, and then we'll leave the cave. And he reviews what we've looked at, We look over the charts, look over the notes, like, let's talk about what we saw.
Yeah.
And then eventually we go back in and we go a little bit further into that cave and we make some notes, draw some charts out.
Yeah.
And then okay, this is a lot. Like, okay, so let's go back outside. We're going to go over what we've seen. And it's just this slow pace that I didn't think God had the patience to do with me, but he does. It's been really helpful to think about it in that way.
Yeah.
So that's what I recently have been viewing my relationship with God to be. A person who is profoundly interested in my life, wants to help me understand it better, is very interested in spending the time slowly discovering things and revealing things to me. He's not impatient. He's not angry. Yeah, he pushes me. Like, hey, I know you would like to leave, but we're going to go further. Sorry about it. But it's in a way that, like, he knows what's beneficial to me and helpful to me. And it's just helped me slow down, too. I'm a very impatient person with self. I just want to, if I'm not, and that's the Tryhard, like the internal Tryhard in me. If mentally and emotionally I'm not at a place that I'm happy with, I get very impatient and angry with myself. And he's just like, hey, chill out, man. You're fine. Why are you trying to get to the bottom of this cave so soon? You're just going to get lost down there. You don't know what's going on.
Let's go faster.
I do. I just want to sprint through it and figure it all out and solve all the problems.
Same.
And he's like, you look me in the eye. You can't. You can't. Your brain can't handle it. Your mind can't handle it. If we go at my pace, you can handle it. So that's been the unclenching of my fists in my try-hardness of like, okay, he knows what's going on. Let him set the pace. Chill the heck out.
What we've talked about can be controversial. Obviously, you grew up thinking a certain way and think differently now. I grew up a certain way, think differently now. I just want to put it out there. If people are listening and they're feeling angry or like triggered or disagree with anything that we've said, that's okay. The point of this podcast is not that Bryce and Lindsay and all the guests know it all. We're on a journey and we're just sharing our experience to help other people walk with Jesus more. This is something I struggle with personally, is I listen to a lot of podcasts and stuff, and sometimes I'll get this like gut reaction of like, I don't like what they just said. And I think that's kind of a problem in the church of we spend so much time focusing on what we disagree about, and then we post about it on Facebook or post about it on whatever, and the world just looks at us like, what is wrong with them? Like, they can't even agree? Like, and that's my own heart. I just have a hard time with that. Like, I think it's great to have a strong theology and to really believe what you believe. But the goal of this podcast isn't to make you upset. Like, we just want to share our story. And if you disagree, if you think, it's sinful to be on medication, I would have some questions for you. But at the end of the day, like, we agree that Jesus is Lord, that Jesus came to earth. He's the Son of God. He died on the cross. He rose from the grave. And we can have like abundant life in him when we put our faith in him and turn, repent from our sin, and follow him. If you believe that, we're good. All these other things are important, but I don't want it to become a distraction and cause the world to think, I don't even want to give that a shot because they're just yelling at each other. To end this episode, is there anything else you want to share?
Probably one of the biggest takeaways I've had from this whole experience is if God is who he says he is, if he is the author, the orchestrator, the creator, the things that we can now see scientifically and biologically, they are maybe tearing away some veils that were there before and just showing, wow, look at what God has done. Look what he's capable of doing. And as I've done a lot of research obsessively, admittedly, about OCD and mental illness, it has just continually validated the teachings of Jesus to me.
Really?
It's insane.
Yeah.
And I mean, God has some pretty clear views on things like anxiety and worry and how unfruitful it is for our lives. Pretty explicit views on like purity of the mind and like what we're meditating on, what we're thinking about. And it's being presented in the Gospels, maybe in like a seemingly archaic way because it's through parables and stories and analogies.
Yeah.
But as I'm diving into secular science, it's like, wow, God knew what he was talking about.
Wow.
He knows what he's talking about actively. I used to like viscerally react to the word trauma because it felt like a word, for lack of a better term, like you had to earn it.
Oh, yeah.
Like for you to say I've had a traumatic life, you better have had a traumatic life.
Yeah.
And to some degree, I still feel that way.
Yeah.
I think the word does get thrown around a little flippantly at times.
Yeah.
But a definition that I found, like kind of within the secular science world, but also like Christian psychology, finding this balance of defining trauma in our lives and what God wants to do with it. It's little t trauma, big T trauma. Maybe you've heard of this before, but little t is you didn't get something that you should have. Big T is something happened to you that shouldn't have. So little t is, if we're just talking about parents, like it's an absentee parent. Like you needed nurturing from a parent and you didn't get it. That can be little t trauma in your life. Something's off. The opposite is true of like something happened to you, like abuse emotionally, mentally, physically, sexually. It shouldn't have happened and now something's off.
Yeah.
It's kind of all in that same framework. The more I understand what we seem to understand about the mind, the human mind, just from a scientific, non-religious perspective, it's like, God, you're so smart. You just know how this works. And these ideas and principles that you presented all throughout Scripture, like they're so true about our psyche and the way that we're impacted by things that happen or don't happen in our lives. And he wants to heal those things that are happening.
Wow.
So it's helped me like connect the world, like the physical world with the spiritual world. Like God is a spiritual being, but he made the physical, and it's just like, these aren't in opposition like I used to believe they were.
Right.
It's helped me a lot see him as who he actually is.
Thank you so much for listening to the Grace for the Tryhard podcast. I hope you feel encouraged, empowered, challenged, and that you know that you are so loved by God. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening, as well as rate and leave a review. Talk to you soon.